I still remember that night, as if the walls themselves were whispering my name. The rain was soft outside, tapping against the windows of the Ashbourne Grand Hotel. That tall white building, standing at the edge of the English countryside, wrapped in fog and secrets. I had never stayed anywhere so luxurious in my life. The chandeliers shimmered like drops of frozen sunlight, and the carpet smelled faintly of roses and smoke. But it wasn't beauty that brought me there, my dear. No, it was pain. It was the kind of pain that crawls beneath your skin and makes you question everything you've ever believed about family, about love, and about truth. Before I continue, let me ask you something. Have you ever looked into someone's eyes, someone you trusted, with all your heart, and suddenly realized you never really knew them at all? If you have, you'll understand why that hotel became the place where my world shattered. And if you haven't, well, listen closely, my dear, because I'm about to tell you what betrayal truly feels like. It was the winter of 1964. My husband, Edward, had just returned from one of his business trips. Or so I thought. He was a charming man, the kind of man who could make a room stop breathing when he entered. He had that polished voice, always gentle, always calm. For 20 years, I believed I was the luckiest woman alive. But life has a way of showing its true face when you least expect it. That evening, a letter arrived, sealed with the emblem of the Ashbourne Grand. Inside was an invitation for Edward and me to attend a private dinner in the hotel's exclusive suite. Room 307. It was supposedly arranged by one of his business associates. Edward seemed startled when he saw it, but he hid it quickly, pressing the paper into his coat pocket as if it were a burning secret. "Oh, it's nothing, Margaret," he said softly. "Just a small affair. Business talk, you know." But his eyes told a different story. They flickered, nervous, like a candle struggling against the wind. I should have known then. I should have known something wasn't right. My dear, before I tell you what happened next, make sure you've subscribed to my channel. Because what I'm about to share isn't just a story. It's a truth that will make you question your own heart. Go on, I'll wait. Subscribe, like, and tell me where you're watching from in the comments. I always love reading your messages. They make me feel less alone in this quiet house. Anyway, where was I? Ah, yes, the hotel. That night, we arrived at Ashbourne Grand. The air smelled of wet pine and old secrets. Edward walked a few steps ahead, his polished shoes clicking against the marble floor. I followed him, clutching my handbag tightly, trying to steady my heart. The receptionist, a young man with an oddly knowing smile, handed Edward a gold key and whispered, "She's already waiting, sir. She's already waiting." Those 4 words sliced through my chest. I looked at Edward, and he pretended not to hear. But I did, and in that instant, something inside me cracked. When we entered room 307, I was struck by its grandeur. Velvet curtains, crystal glasses, and a roaring fire that seemed far too large for such a small gathering. On the table, there were 2 glasses of champagne already poured, and lipstick on one of them. Edward froze. I could hear the clock ticking. Then, from the adjoining room, came the soft sound of heels. Slow, deliberate, confident. She appeared like a ghost stepping out of a memory. Tall, graceful, dressed in a satin gown the color of midnight. Her perfume filled the air, sweet and poisonous. And when she looked at me, her lips curved into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Margaret," she said softly. "So lovely to finally meet you." My blood turned to ice. She knew my name, and Edward. Edward couldn't even look at me. The woman's name was Lillian Moore, a name I had seen only once before, written in hurried ink on one of Edward's letters, months ago, which he said was just business correspondence. I remember standing there, unable to move, while the fire crackled behind me. My voice trembled as I asked, Edward, who is she? Lillian laughed. That kind of laugh that tells you she's not laughing at the joke, but at you. Oh, darling, she said to me, I'm the one your husband's been promising the world to. It felt as though the walls closed in on me. My heart pounded so loud I thought it would burst. Edward tried to speak, stammering, begging me to listen, but I couldn't. I turned to leave. But then Lillian said something that froze me mid-step. You really should hear the rest before you go, Margaret, she said, because this isn't just about your husband's betrayal. It's about your family, your inheritance, your father's estate, and what he never told you. Inheritance? My father's estate. I spun around. What do you mean? Her expression softened, but her eyes still glimmered with cruelty. Your father left something behind, dear. Something Edward and I have been managing. That word echoed in my head like a scream. You see, my father was a wealthy man, but he died when I was young. I was told his business had failed, that there was nothing left. We lived modestly after that, or so I thought. But as Lillian began to talk, the truth started to unfold, thread by thread, tearing apart everything I had believed. Edward had been working with Lillian for years, not for business, but to siphon what was left of my father's estate. A secret account in Switzerland, hidden through shell companies. And all this time, my dear, the man who held me every night, who swore his love with every heartbeat, was the one pulling the strings. I remember my knees giving out. I fell against the table, spilling champagne across the floor. Edward tried to hold me, but I pushed him away. His hands felt like fire. How could you? I whispered. After everything, after us, he didn't answer. His silence said it all. And then, to make matters worse, Lillian handed me a small envelope. Your father left this, she said. He wanted you to have it, though I doubt he ever imagined it would end up here. Inside was a photograph. My father standing in front of the same hotel, holding a woman's hand. But it wasn't my mother. It was Lillian. I remember gasping, the room spinning, my mind refusing to accept what I was seeing. This can't be real, I said. My father died long before you were even... Lillian's smirk widened. Oh, my dear, do you really think you knew when your father died? Her words hung in the air like a curse. And before I could speak again, the lights flickered. The fire dimmed. Somewhere outside, a clock struck midnight. That's when I realized. This wasn't just betrayal. It was something far deeper. Something my father, Edward, and Lillian had all tried to bury in the same grave. And I was standing right on top of it. My dear, if you're still with me, don't forget to like this video. It helps me share my story with others who felt that sting of betrayal. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I love seeing how far my little stories reach. From London to Lahore, from New York to Delhi. It warms my old heart. Now, if you're ready, in the next part, I'll tell you what happened when I opened the second letter that was hidden inside that envelope. The one that changed everything. The one that told me who Lillian really was. Because, my dear, that night, in that luxury hotel room, I didn't just lose my husband. I lost the truth I had built my entire life upon. When the lights flickered that night in room 307, something inside me changed forever. I felt as if time had stopped, holding its breath, waiting for the moment I would break. My fingers trembled as I looked down at that photograph again. My father, smiling, his hand resting gently on Lillian's shoulder. I could barely breathe. It didn't make sense. My father died when I was 19. Lillian couldn't have been more than 25 now. The math refused to add up, and yet, her eyes in the picture were the same ones staring at me across that flickering fire. Edward tried to speak again, reaching out, whispering, Margaret, it's not what it looks like. But lies, my dear, they have a sound. They tremble at the edge of a man's voice. They hide behind his eyes. and you can feel them even before the words escape his lips. I could feel them now, thick, heavy, choking the air between us. Not what it looks like. I whispered. Then tell me what it is, Edward. Tell me why this woman has a picture of my father, and why she's in it. He didn't answer. He just lowered his head, like a guilty child. That silence said more than any confession ever could. Lillian smiled, slow, cruel, savoring every heartbeat of my confusion. Then she poured herself a glass of champagne, sat elegantly by the fireplace, and said, "Would you like to know the truth, Margaret? The truth your husband was too weak to tell you." Before I could stop myself, I nodded. I needed to know. Even if it destroyed me, your father, she began, was not the man everyone thought he was. The estate, the business, the money, they were built on secrets. And one of those secrets was me. She paused, watching me, almost amused by my shock. I was your father's child, she said finally. His other daughter. For a moment, I couldn't comprehend the words. The fire crackled. The rain tapped against the windows, and all I could hear was my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. "You're lying," I whispered. "You can't be. That would mean your husband was in love with your half-sister," she said calmly. And there it was, the truth, the unbearable, twisted truth that shattered everything I had ever believed about my life. My breath came out in gasps. I wanted to scream, to run, to disappear, but I couldn't move. I stood frozen in that golden light, a statue carved out of heartbreak. Edward tried to come closer. "I didn't know, Margaret," he said, voice breaking. I swear I didn't know until it was too late. She found me. She showed me documents, letters from your father. I thought it was a coincidence. A coincidence. As if love and betrayal could ever be coincidences. "Oh, Edward," I said softly, almost laughing through my tears. "You always were good with words. Tell me, did you whisper her name the same way you used to whisper mine?" He bowed his head. That's when I saw it. A flicker of something in Lillian's expression. Not pride, not victory. Guilt. Deep, gnawing guilt. She turned her gaze away for the first time, as if the truth had burned even her. "I didn't come here to ruin you, Margaret," she said, after a long silence. "I came to tell you that your father didn't just leave behind money. He left behind letters. Letters that explain everything. One of them is meant for you." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small yellowed envelope. It had my father's handwriting on it, unmistakable, neat and deliberate. My knees went weak as I took it from her. "Why didn't you give this to me before?" I asked. "Because," she said, glancing at Edward, "I wasn't sure you were ready to know the truth. But after seeing what he's done to you, you deserve to know everything." My fingers trembled as I tore the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper, brittle, creased, and heavy with time. My father's words stared back at me in fading ink. "My dearest Margaret, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and the truth I've hidden must finally come to light. You have a sister, Lillian, born out of a mistake I made long ago. I tried to make it right, but I was a coward. I thought I could protect you both by hiding the truth. I was wrong. The inheritance, the company, the house, it all belongs to you both. But there is something darker behind the fortune, something that took lives, that destroyed families, and that I could never confess to in person. If you want to understand me, go to Ashbourne Grand, room 307. On the anniversary of my death, everything begins and ends there. I felt the words burn into my skin. Everything began and ended there. And here I was, standing in the very room he named. Tears blurred my vision. The fire seemed to fade into the walls. My father's secrets. My husband's lies. My half-sister's betrayal. They were all tangled together like threads in a cursed tapestry. And then I saw it. At the bottom of the letter, faint and smudged, was a single line written in haste. "If you find this, beware of her. She knows what happened to me." My heart froze. I looked up at Lillian. "Who does he mean?" I asked. She hesitated, just for a second, and then smiled, too calmly. "He was old, confused. Don't take that part seriously." But I saw it. The flicker in her eyes. The way she glanced, ever so slightly toward the door, as if someone else might be listening. Edward noticed it too. He turned sharply, scanning the dim corners of the room. "Who's there?" He called out. Silence. But I swear to you, my dear, I heard it then. The faint sound of breathing, not ours, not human even. Slow, rhythmic, coming from behind the wardrobe. Edward rushed forward and pulled it open, but there was nothing inside. Just a mirror, old, cracked, and slightly tilted. But when I looked at it, for the briefest second, I saw someone standing behind me. A man. My father! I screamed. The lights flickered again. Lillian gasped. And when I looked back, the reflection was gone. Edward tried to calm me, but I could barely stand. "It's him," I whispered. "He's here. He's trying to tell us something." Lillian turned pale. "Don't say that," she muttered. "Don't you dare say that." And that's when I knew she wasn't afraid of ghosts. She was afraid of the truth. She grabbed her coat and ran toward the door, but before leaving, she turned to me with eyes that looked almost pleading. "Don't dig into the past, Margaret," she said. "Some things should stay buried." And then she was gone. Edward collapsed into a chair, his face pale as death. "What have we done?" he whispered. I didn't answer. My hands were still clutching the letter, now damp from my tears. The fire hissed, a log cracking sharply like a warning. I felt my father's presence still in the room. Heavy, watchful, restless. And in that silence, a thought took root in my mind. A terrible thought. What if my father hadn't died naturally? What if someone, perhaps the same person he warned me about, had made sure his secrets stayed buried forever? My dear, before I go on, if you're still watching, give this story a like. It helps me more than you know, and it tells me that you want to hear the rest. Tell me in the comments what you think. Was Lillian telling the truth? Or was she trying to cover up something darker? Because, in the next part, I'll tell you what I found when I returned to that hotel room the next morning, and how I discovered the hidden door behind the mirror, the one that led to the truth about my father's death. I didn't sleep that night, my dear. How could I? The wind howled like a grieving widow outside my window, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's reflection staring back at me from that cracked mirror in room 307. Edward had fallen silent, sitting in the corner of the room, as if words had abandoned him altogether. I watched the flames in the fireplace turn from gold to ash, and in their quiet death, I felt something inside me harden. The part of me that once trusted, once forgave. By dawn, Edward was gone. He didn't wake me, didn't say goodbye, just left the scent of his cologne on the pillow beside mine. Perhaps he thought he could escape what we'd seen, what we'd learned. But the truth, my dear, doesn't let go so easily. It clings to you, in your breath, in your bones, until it becomes part of who you are. So that morning, I dressed myself in my thick wool coat, wrapped a scarf around my neck, and went back to the Ashbourne Grand Hotel. Alone, the fog was thick, curling over the cobblestones, like smoke from a dying fire. When I entered the lobby, the same young receptionist from the night before looked up at me, startled, almost afraid. "Good morning," I said, my voice steady. "I'm looking for room 307. He blinked, stammered. "I'm sorry, madam. That room isn't occupied. It hasn't been for years." I frowned. "That can't be right. I was there last night with my husband. We met a woman named Lillian Moore." His face went pale. He hesitated, glanced at the manager behind the counter, and then lowered his voice. "Madam, There is no Lillian Moore on our guest list. There never has been. My heart skipped a beat. I felt the room spin for a moment. You must be mistaken, I whispered. She was here. I spoke to her. She gave me this. I pulled out the letter from my bag, the one in my father's handwriting. The young man looked at it, then slowly backed away. That handwriting, he said softly. It looks just like the man who owned this hotel. Before it was sold, Mr. Henry Ashbourne. I froze. My father's name was Henry Ashbourne. I gripped the counter. You mean my father built this hotel? The boy nodded slowly. Yes, madam. It used to be his family estate before he turned it into the Grand. But it was sold after his death. My knees almost gave way beneath me. My father had built this place. He had lived here, and now, somehow, he had led me back to it. Through his words, his warnings, his ghost. May I see the room? I asked. The receptionist hesitated, then handed me a key. Be careful, he said softly. Strange things happen in that room. Staff say they hear voices at night. A woman's voice. Sometimes crying, sometimes laughing. I didn't reply. I just took the key, turned, and began to climb the grand staircase. The hallway leading to room 307 felt colder than the rest of the hotel. The lights flickered faintly, the walls lined with portraits of my ancestors, their painted eyes following me as I passed. When I reached the door, my hand trembled as I turned the key. The moment I stepped inside, the air changed. It smelled of smoke, perfume, and something metallic. Something like blood. The curtains were drawn, but a thin ray of light cut through the dust. The champagne glasses from the night before were gone. So was the letter I'd left on the table. Only the cracked mirror remained. I approached it slowly. My reflection stared back, pale, tired, and haunted. I touched the edge of the glass, tracing the crack with my fingertip. That's when I felt it. A faint draft, cold and steady, coming from behind the mirror. It wasn't just a wall. There was space behind it. I pressed harder. The mirror wobbled slightly, and beneath its frame, I saw something glint. A small metal latch, nearly invisible unless you looked for it. My breath caught. I pulled it, and with a low groan, the mirror shifted aside, revealing a narrow wooden door hidden in the wall. For a long moment, I just stood there, staring at it. My father's warning echoed in my head. If you find this, beware of her. But I had to know. I pushed the door open. The air inside was stale, heavy with dust and secrets. A narrow staircase descended into darkness. I hesitated at the top step, clutching my handbag like a shield. Then I took a deep breath and began to descend. Each step creaked beneath my weight. My candle flickered, casting trembling shadows on the walls. The air grew colder the deeper I went, until I reached a small cellar room, lined with old trunks, yellowed papers, and one large desk in the center. On that desk sat another letter, this one addressed simply, to whoever survives me. My heart pounded as I opened it. If you have found this room, then the truth is already chasing you. The woman you trust most. She knows how I died. I was poisoned, not by enemies, but by family. Lillian was not the one I feared. It was her mother. She promised me love, but she wanted my fortune. She tried to silence me, and she nearly succeeded. But she didn't destroy everything. I left the evidence here, in this room. The key to my death lies within the red trunk. I looked around. There were 3 trunks, blue, green, and red. The red one was the largest, its lock rusted but still intact. I knelt, searching my pockets for something to pry it open, and found my hairpin. With shaking hands, I pushed it into the keyhole until I heard a soft click. The lid creaked open. Inside were letters, hundreds of them. My father's handwriting filled every page. I began to read, one after another. Each letter spoke of betrayal, of a woman he loved who had deceived him, who had stolen documents, signatures, and money. A woman named Rose Moore. Lillian's mother. I gasped. Rose Moore. That name had been whispered in my family when I was a child, spoken only once or twice, always followed by silence. My mother had despised her, I remembered now, and it all made sense. Lillian wasn't my father's legitimate daughter. She was the product of an affair that had destroyed everything. And Rose, she had poisoned him to steal his fortune, using her daughter years later to finish what she had started. I dropped the letters trembling. My father's spirit hadn't haunted me for vengeance. He'd haunted me for justice. I stood, heart racing, and that's when I heard it again. Footsteps. Soft, slow, descending the stairs. Who's there? I called out. No answer, only the sound of a woman humming, faintly, eerily familiar. Then from the shadows a voice whispered, "You shouldn't have come here, Margaret." It was Lillian. Her face was pale, her hair disheveled, her eyes wild. She stepped into the candlelight, her lips trembling. "You don't understand," she said. "It wasn't supposed to go this far." I stepped back, clutching one of the letters. "You used me," I said. "You used Edward. You let him think it was about money. But this was about revenge." She shook her head, tears glistening. "You think I wanted this? My mother ruined everything. She ruined you, him, and me. I came here to destroy her legacy, not yours." I didn't know what to believe anymore. Her voice cracked with pain, but her eyes, they held something else, a secret still untold. Before I could speak again, there was a loud crash. The mirror upstairs. We both froze. Someone else was in the room above us, someone who had followed me, and in that moment, I knew. The story wasn't over. It was only just beginning. My dear, before I continue, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't yet. It helps keep this little channel alive, and it lets me share these stories with kind souls like you. And please, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. It warms my heart knowing my voice reaches far beyond this old English town. In the next part, I'll tell you what happened when I climbed back up those stairs, and who I found waiting by the mirror, because the face I saw that night wasn't human at all. The sound of the crash echoed through the stairwell like thunder rolling through a tomb. The candle flickered violently in my hand, its flame stretching long and thin before nearly going out. Lillian's eyes met mine, wide, terrified, and shining in the dim light. "What was that?" she whispered. I didn't answer. The air had gone deathly still. Even the hum of the old pipes had fallen silent, as if the hotel itself was holding its breath. My pulse pounded so loud I could feel it in my ears. Without thinking, I reached for her wrist. "Stay behind me," I said. She hesitated, but for once she didn't argue. We moved together up the staircase, the wood creaking beneath our feet, our shadows twisting against the walls. When we reached the hidden door, the mirror above it hung slightly ajar, cracked further down the middle. The once bright fire in the room had burned out, leaving behind only glowing embers. But the thing that made my blood run cold wasn't the darkness. It was the smell, a strange sweet scent, like decaying roses. Then I saw it. Footprints, wet footprints, leading from the fireplace to the mirror. Bare, human, but small, child-sized. Lillian gasped and covered her mouth. "Margaret," she whispered. "Please tell me those were already here." I shook my head. They weren't. I could barely get the words out. The air was colder now, heavy enough to feel in my lungs. The footprints glistened faintly as if freshly made. My candle trembled in my grip. And then, from the far end of the corridor, came the sound of laughter, soft, giggling. A child's voice, light, playful, and horribly out of place. Lillian backed into the wall. No, it can't be." I turned to her. "Who is it? Who's here?" She pressed her hands to her temples, shaking. "My mother had a daughter before me," she whispered. "A child who who died in this hotel. I thought it was just a story." Her voice broke. "She said the girl fell down the stairs one night. But my mother lied about everything. What if she—" The laughter came again. Closer this time, circling us like a song with no end. The candle flame bent toward the mirror, as if drawn by something unseen. "Stop it!" I cried out. "Who's there? Show yourself." And then, the mirror fogged. Slowly, words began to appear, written by an invisible hand across the glass. "You shouldn't have come back," Lillian screamed. The candle went out. For a few seconds, there was nothing. Just darkness and breathing. Then the temperature dropped. I could see my breath clouding in front of me. Something brushed past my shoulder. Cold, deliberate, almost tender. I froze. "Margaret," a voice whispered. My father's voice. I spun around, heart hammering. Father, nothing. Just the faint echo of the word, fading into silence. Lillian was crying now, clutching her hair, whispering over and over, "I didn't mean for this to happen." I could barely move. The world felt frozen, as if time itself had turned to ice. Then I saw it, a faint golden light glowing from behind the fireplace. There was another passage, smaller this time, half hidden by soot and stone. I moved toward it, ignoring Lillian's desperate pleas. "Don't go in there," she said. "Please, Margaret, don't." But I had come too far. The truth had already wrapped its claws around me. I had to see. I knelt by the hearth and pushed aside the grate. Behind it, I found a small wooden door, no bigger than a cupboard. It was warm to the touch, though no fire burned. I pulled it open, and inside, there was a single object. A child's music box, shaped like a rose. It began to play on its own. The melody was sweet, sad, and achingly familiar. I'd heard it before. In my nursery when I was a child, my father used to hum it to me before bed. I whispered. He used to sing this to me. Lillian's face went pale. "That tune," she said. My mother used to hum it too. The realization hit us both at the same time. Our father had sung the same lullaby to both his daughters, not knowing one day it would bring us together in this cursed room. And then, from the depths of the passage, a voice whispered, not my father's, not the child's, but a woman's, cold, sharp, almost angry. "You shouldn't have taken what was mine," Lillian screamed again, stumbling backward. "That's her! That's my mother!" The mirror cracked completely, shattering across the floor. The candle flared back to life, burning blue for an instant before returning to normal. I could feel the presence now, heavy, furious, pressing against the air around us. I grabbed Lillian's arm. "We have to leave!" But before we could reach the door, it slammed shut on its own. The lock turned. Lillian collapsed against it, pounding, crying, "Please, let us out!" I turned toward the mirror, what was left of it, and saw movement within the shards. A woman's reflection, red lips, dark eyes, pale skin, watching us. "Rose Moore," I whispered. She smiled, and for a moment, I swear she looked alive. "You took everything from me," the reflection hissed. "My love, my child, my name. You thought you could erase me. But the house remembers." The walls groaned. The chandelier trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling in slow glittering rain. Lillian screamed and clung to me. I could barely breathe. Every sound felt distant, muffled by terror. Then, just as suddenly as it began, silence. The music box stopped. The air warmed. The reflection vanished. The door swung open on its own. Lillian and I ran. Down the hall, past the portraits, through the lobby. The receptionist shouted after us, but we didn't stop. We burst into the cold morning fog and didn't speak until we reached the car. Only then did I realize I still had the music box in my hand. Lillian stared at it. "Burn it," she said quietly. "Promise me you'll burn it." I wanted to. I truly did. But I couldn't. Something about it felt unfinished. as if destroying it would only anger what still lingered behind that mirror. So I kept it, and that, my dear, was my greatest mistake, because that very night, when I returned home, I placed the box on my dresser, and it started playing again. On its own, the same melody, the same slow, haunting tune, only this time, I could hear my father's voice singing softly along. My dear, if you're still with me, thank you. These memories aren't easy to relive, but somehow, sharing them with you makes the silence of this old house bearable. If you haven't yet, do subscribe and tap the little bell. It helps me keep telling you these stories, even when they hurt. And please, tell me in the comments, do you believe that the past can haunt the living? That night, after Lillian and I escaped that dreadful hotel, I thought I'd left the darkness behind. How foolish I was. The sky above London was heavy with rain as I drove home. The kind of rain that looks silver under the street lamps, falling in long, quiet sheets. The city had begun to change by then, losing the grace of the old world. New buildings were rising, new sounds, new faces. But inside my home, everything still smelled of the 1950s. Wood polish, tea leaves, and the faint perfume my husband used to love. When I closed the door behind me, the silence was unbearable. Even the clock seemed afraid to tick. I hung my coat by the fire, made myself some tea, and placed the music box on the mantelpiece. I didn't mean to keep it. I told myself I'd throw it away in the morning. But as I sat there, watching the candlelight dance on its polished surface, something inside me couldn't let go. It was strange. I felt drawn to it, the same way I'd once felt drawn to my father's study as a little girl, even when I wasn't allowed inside. You see, there was always something mysterious about my father. He was a kind man, but there was a sadness in him that never left. He used to disappear for days and return with a distant look in his eyes. I thought it was work, but after what happened at the hotel, I wasn't so sure anymore. That night, I poured myself another cup of tea and tried to calm my nerves. But then, just as the clock struck midnight, I heard it, the soft click of the music box. I froze. It had opened by itself. The lid rose slowly, the tiny ballerina spinning in the pale light. The same melody filled the room. That lullaby I'd heard since childhood. But now, beneath the tune, there was something else. A whisper, my name, Margaret. I dropped my cup. It shattered across the floor. I turned toward the fireplace, but there was no one there. The curtains swayed gently, though the windows were shut tight. The whisper came again, closer this time, clearer. Margaret, you shouldn't have gone back. I stumbled backward, clutching my chest. Who's there? The flame in the candle bent, as if pulled by a breeze that didn't exist. My father's photograph, the one in his old military uniform, slipped from the mantel and crashed to the ground. I bent to pick it up. The glass was cracked right across his face, and behind the broken glass, something caught my eye. There was a folded paper hidden inside the frame. My hands trembled as I pulled it out. It was yellowed with age, written in my father's handwriting. A letter addressed not to me, but to Rose Moore. My dearest Rose. They told me I had to choose. But how does a man divide his heart in two? I have done what I must for the sake of appearances. But know this, my love for you will not fade, not even if the world forgets our names. I will see you again, my darling, in the place where time cannot touch us. Charles. My knees gave way. I sat on the rug, the letter trembling in my hands. My father, and Rose Moore. So it was true. He loved her, and my mother must have known. That was why she'd burned every trace of that woman from our lives. That was why she'd forbidden us from ever setting foot in that hotel. But what I couldn't understand was why the hotel still remembered him. The music box stopped. For a moment, all was silent, and then I heard footsteps above me, slow, deliberate, pacing across the bedroom floor. I lived alone. My heart hammered so loud it drowned out the rain. I grabbed the poker from beside the fireplace and crept up the stairs. Each step felt heavier than the last. When I reached the landing, the corridor was dimly lit by the old wall sconce, its flame flickering. The door to my bedroom was slightly ajar. "Who's there?" I called out. No answer. I pushed the door open and gasped. Someone had drawn the curtains open wide. The wind was howling through the open window, scattering papers across the room. But what froze me to the core was what lay on my pillow. A fresh white rose, exactly like the one carved on the music box. I picked it up with trembling fingers. It was real. Still dewy, still fragrant, impossible. And then the mirror across from my bed began to fog. Slowly, like breath spreading across glass, I could see my reflection fading, and behind me, another shape began to form. A woman's silhouette, slim, graceful, wearing something that shimmered like silk. I turned, but no one was there. When I looked back, the silhouette had moved closer. "He loved me," a voice whispered, but they buried me in silence. My throat went dry. "Rose!" The mirror rippled, as if the glass were liquid. For an instant, I saw her face, pale, beautiful, eyes filled with something between sorrow and rage. "You took my place," she said. "You were his daughter, the proof of what he chose over me. But the dead remember, Margaret. We always remember." The mirror cracked. I screamed. The sound shattered the silence of the entire house. I ran downstairs, barely breathing, and grabbed the telephone. But when I tried to dial Lillian, the line was dead. Only static. Then faintly through the receiver, I heard that same melody. The lullaby. I threw the phone down and backed away. My legs gave out beneath me, and I sank to the floor. The music box was playing again. And this time, it wasn't just the tune. It was humming, as if someone, unseen, was singing along from the other side. I covered my ears. "Stop it, please stop." The sound grew louder, sharper, almost pleading. And then suddenly, silence. When I looked up, the lid of the box was closed again, and carved across the top, faint but unmistakable, were the words, "Find me." I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I sat there till dawn, staring at that box, wondering what kind of truth it was trying to drag me toward. And you, my dear, if you're still listening, tell me, what would you have done? Would you have thrown it away, or kept it, like I did, hoping it would explain itself? If you think I should have burned it, let me know down below in the comments. I do read them, you know, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. It helps me keep these memories alive, even when part of me wishes they'd fade. Because in the next part, I'll tell you what happened when I did go back, when I returned to that hotel, not for answers, but to bury the past, and what I found waiting for me in room 213. For 2 nights, I didn't sleep. I sat by the fire, watching the music box, waiting for it to move. It didn't, but every so often, I thought I could hear a faint hum beneath the ticking of the clock, like a breath that wasn't mine. I told myself it was just nerves, or perhaps the old house settling. But by the 3rd night, I knew. The box was waiting for me to do something. I'd tried to stay away from that hotel, but it felt like it was calling me back, whispering through the rain, through the wind that scratched at my window panes. Even my dreams were filled with it. Long corridors, velvet curtains, the faint scent of rose perfume, and that child's laughter. By morning, I made my decision. I packed a small bag, wrapped the music box in a silk cloth, and left before sunrise. The roads were empty, slick with rain. The world outside looked like a painting, half erased by fog. When I reached the outskirts of town, I saw the sign, the Wellington Hotel. Its golden letters had faded, its gardens wild and overgrown. The building stood silent, as if waiting for me. I parked near the gate and took a deep breath. My hands were shaking. The front door was unlocked. As I stepped inside, that familiar chill crept down my spine. The reception desk was empty. The smell of dust and damp hung in the air. The chandelier above me swayed slightly. Though there was no draft, I felt as though I were intruding on something ancient, something that never forgave being disturbed. The carpet muffled my footsteps as I walked down the corridor. My eyes traced the faded wallpaper, the portraits of strangers who had once lived, loved, and vanished here. But it was the mirror at the far end, the same mirror that hid the secret staircase, that stopped me cold. It had been repaired. No cracks, no marks, as if nothing had ever happened. And yet, when I leaned close, I could swear I saw movement behind my reflection. The flicker of a shadow that didn't belong to me. My voice came out in a whisper. "Rose?" The light flickered. I tightened my grip on the music box and made my way toward the stairs. Every step creaked like a warning. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I passed room 209, where Lillian and I had stayed before, and stopped at room 213. The door stood slightly ajar. A wave of dread washed over me. I wanted to turn back, but something deeper than fear pushed me forward. The need to know the truth. Inside, the air was cold and still. The curtains were drawn, but thin lines of daylight slipped through the cracks. The same fireplace stood in the corner, but this time it was unlit. I placed the music box on the table. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a soft click, the lid opened by itself. The tune began. Slow, tender, sorrowful. The tiny ballerina spun, her shadow turning on the wall. And then, from behind me, a voice spoke. "You came back." I turned sharply. A woman stood by the window, half hidden in the pale light. Her hair was dark, her dress elegant, though faintly translucent, like smoke made solid. Her eyes, those haunting eyes, looked straight into mine. "Rose?" I breathed. She smiled faintly, and my blood ran cold. "You have your father's eyes." Tears burned in my own. "He loved you, didn't he?" Her expression softened. "More than he was allowed to. Your mother found out. She made him choose. And when he chose her, she made certain I would never haunt her life again. But she didn't know that love leaves traces. It seeps into walls, into mirrors, into songs. Why me?" I whispered. "Why are you haunting me?" "Because you are the bridge," she said. "You carry both our bloodlines. You are the proof that he once loved me, and that he betrayed me. I was never meant to fade, Margaret. I was meant to live through you." I stepped back, horrified. "I'm not yours." Her face darkened, and the room grew colder. "Then why do you think you've always felt out of place? Why do you think you were drawn back here?" The music box's melody slowed. Each note felt heavy, deliberate, as if marking the seconds before something terrible. Then she said something that nearly stopped my heart. "You are not your mother's daughter." The words echoed through the room like a gunshot. I shook my head violently. No, that's impossible." "Look into the box," she whispered. He hid the truth where love began. My hands trembled as I reached for the box. I lifted the ballerina gently, and underneath her tiny platform, I felt something hard. I pried it open, and there, folded carefully, was another letter, and a lock of dark hair tied with a ribbon. The letter was addressed to Margaret Rose. "To my darling girl, if you are reading this, then the world has twisted our story into something cruel. You were born in this hotel, hidden from society's eyes. Rose wanted to raise you, but your mother insisted otherwise. She claimed you as her own. Forgive me. One day you'll understand that love, when forbidden, turns to ruin. Your father, Charles Moore." The world blurred. My knees buckled, and I clutched the table for balance. My breath came out in ragged gasps. No, that can't be true. But deep down, I knew. I'd always known something didn't fit. My mother's coldness, her constant disdain, the way she never looked at me, the same way she looked at my brother. Rose stepped closer. Her voice softened. "You are my child, Margaret. That is why the house remembers you. That is why the music box sings to you." I could feel tears streaming down my face. "Then why haunt me? Why torment me?" "Because you forgot me," she whispered, "and because I cannot rest until you forgive what was done." The room filled with light, blinding, white, and cold. The walls seemed to pulse with a heartbeat not my own. The floorboards shook. The mirror across the room shattered into 1,000 pieces, each shard reflecting her face, her sorrow, her fury. I screamed her name, but she was gone. The box slammed shut. The music stopped, and for the first time in my life, I understood what it felt like to lose both your past and your identity in a single heartbeat. When I stumbled out of the hotel, dawn was breaking again. The air was clear, the rain had stopped, and birds were singing as though nothing had happened. But I knew better. The truth had been waiting for me all along, in that room, in that melody, in my own reflection, and yet something still wasn't right. The letter said I was born in the hotel, but the records, the papers, the date, everything I'd been told said otherwise. Someone had rewritten my life. Someone had built an entire lie to hide the truth, and I had to find out who. My dear, if you've come this far with me, you're brave, truly brave. This story isn't easy to tell, nor is it easy to hear. But I want you to stay with me, because the next part will take us deeper than ever before. If you're still listening, please subscribe and tap the little bell. It keeps my story alive, and you'll be the first to know when I continue. Tell me, in the comments, where you're watching from. I always wonder if these old tales reach you across oceans, across time itself. Because next, I'll tell you what happened when I tried to trace my real birth, and what I found in the ashes of my mother's diary. The morning after I returned from the hotel, I didn't speak to anyone. The world outside my window seemed distant, almost unreal. The rain had stopped, leaving the cobblestones glistening like black glass. But inside, the storm raged. My heart and mind were trapped in a tangle of secrets, a tapestry of lies I had never imagined I'd inherit. I sat in my study, the music box resting on the desk before me. Its ballerina no longer spun, but I could feel its presence, like it was watching me, waiting. My father's letters, folded carefully, lay beside it. I couldn't bring myself to open them again, yet I couldn't leave them closed. Every word was a key to the truth I'd been denied. I remembered what Rose had said in the hotel. "You are my child. That is why the house remembers you." Those words replayed in my mind, each syllable a weight pressing down on my chest. I had lived my life believing I was Margaret Ashbourne, daughter of my mother and father, untouched by scandal. And yet, the truth, so fragile and cruel, had been buried under decades of lies. I decided that day I would start at the beginning, my mother's past. She had always been so careful, so meticulous, erasing every trace of her mistakes. But nothing is ever truly erased. Letters, diaries, and old photographs have a way of surviving. I went to her old writing desk, tucked away in the corner of the house. Dust covered its surface, but underneath, I found a stack of papers, letters, receipts, and a diary bound in leather. My hands trembled as I picked it up. The smell of aged paper and leather filled my nose, a scent that instantly transported me back to my childhood, to a world that had seemed safe and ordered. I opened the diary. My mother's handwriting was precise, neat, and cold, but the first lines made me pause. April 12th, 1950. He has returned to me, and I must protect what is mine. The child must be claimed before the world sees. No one must know, not even the girl herself. I froze. The dates matched the hospital records I had seen when I was a teenager. I had been born in the hospital my mother claimed, but the diary told a different story. My birth had been hidden. Someone had rewritten history. Tears streamed down my face as I read further. Margaret Rose will be raised as my own. She will never know the truth of her birth, and perhaps it is better this way. But I feel the weight of what I must do. Charles, he cannot be allowed to know. If he finds out, he will take her, and then everything will be ruined. Rose's legacy must survive. My child, my secret, my triumph. Every word burned into my soul. My mother had not only lied about my father's love, but had concealed my very existence. I wasn't just a child of secrets. I was the center of them. Then I noticed something else. Tucked between the pages was a photograph. My mother, young and elegant, smiling at a woman I didn't recognize. Her eyes were cold, calculating, but the woman beside her had the same eyes I'd seen in Lillian's reflection in the hotel mirror. I gasped. It's her. It's Rose. Suddenly the music box began to hum. I looked up in terror. The ballerina spun once, then stopped. The air in the room grew cold. The shadows deepened. I felt the presence of someone watching me. I whispered, "Rose, are you here?" A soft, chilling laugh answered me. I stumbled back, clutching the diary. "What do you want from me?" Her voice came from the corners of the room, faint and ghostly. "You have what I could not have, and yet you fear me. You must understand, Margaret. It is not malice that binds us. It is the truth. Your father loved me. Your mother betrayed me, and you carry the burden." I sank into the chair, shaking. Then what am I supposed to do? I didn't ask for any of this. "You must uncover it," the voice whispered. "You must face what your mother tried to erase. Only then can peace come. For you, for me, for him." I shivered. Every nerve in my body was alert. The diary trembled in my hands. Outside, the world seemed to hold its breath. I knew then what I had to do. I had to return to the hotel, not for answers, not for revenge, but for clarity. Room 307, the mirror, the music box. All of it had led me here. The past wasn't finished with me. And you, my dear, if you're still listening, thank you for staying with me through all this. If you haven't already, subscribe and hit the bell. Share this story with someone who loves mysteries. And comment below. Where would you go if your past was calling you from a place like this? Because in the next part, I'll tell you what I discovered when I returned to the hotel again. The hidden room I never saw. The letters no one had dared to read. And the voice that finally revealed my father's last secret. The moment I decided to return to the hotel, a strange calm settled over me. The kind you feel before a storm breaks. I packed lightly, the diary, the music box, and a small flashlight. Outside, the streets were slick with rain, reflecting the dim glow of the street lamps. The fog hung low, curling like a phantom hand along the cobblestones. I felt as though the city itself was guiding me toward the hotel, as if it knew the secrets waiting inside. When I arrived, the Wellington Hotel looked abandoned, yet familiar. Its windows stared at me like watchful eyes. The door opened easily, as if it had been expecting me. The lobby smelled of aged wood and damp stone. The receptionist was nowhere to be seen. I knew better than to call out. The hotel answered only to those who belonged to it. I climbed the grand staircase, past the portraits of strangers who had long been dead, until I reached the hallway leading to room 307. The door was slightly open. My heart pounded as I pushed it wider. The room looked untouched, as if no one had entered since the day I'd first set foot here. Yet I could feel it, the presence of someone, something, waiting. I set the diary and the music box on the table and approached the mirror. The glass shimmered faintly, reflecting not only my image, but something else behind me, a shadow. I froze. It was small at first, like a child. But then it grew taller, stretching toward me Margaret! A voice whispered from the shadow. It was soft, delicate, yet edged with pain. You've come back. I swallowed hard. I had to, I said. I need to understand. The mirror rippled, like water disturbed by a stone. And then I saw her, Rose Moore, alive in the reflection, though she had long since passed. Her face was pale, eyes glimmering with sorrow. She raised a hand, pointing toward the fireplace. I followed her gaze. There, behind the hearth, was a panel I had never noticed before. Faint scratches marred the wood, almost invisible. I pressed against it, and it creaked open, revealing a narrow, steep staircase, descending into darkness. Every instinct told me to turn away, but something stronger, the pull of truth, drove me downward. My flashlight cut a thin circle of light, illuminating dust-covered trunks and old furniture. At the center of the room was a large chest, bound with iron. I approached it slowly. My hands shook as I lifted the lid. Inside were letters, photographs, and documents, evidence of lives carefully hidden. I recognized my father's handwriting immediately. The first letter I opened made my breath catch. To Margaret Rose, if you are reading this, know that your life has been hidden by those who feared love more than truth. Your mother could not bear the thought of you knowing your origins. I have tried to protect you, but now the past must be revealed. Your father, Charles Moore. I dropped to my knees, tears streaming down my face. Every word I had ever doubted, every memory I had questioned, was coming together. I was not the daughter of Margaret Ashbourne alone. I was the child of Rose Moore and Charles Moore. My mother had claimed me, raised me in secrecy, hiding the truth to protect herself, her reputation, and her control over our family's wealth. As I read, the air shifted, the temperature dropped, and the music box began to play on its own, filling the room with the haunting melody. Behind me, I heard footsteps. I turned, and there she was, Rose Moore, standing fully in the room now, her form almost solid, almost real. You see, Margaret, she said softly, her voice trembling. I never wanted to hurt you, but I could not rest until you knew the truth. Your mother stole you from me, yes, but now, finally, you know. I fell to the floor, overcome with grief, rage, and relief all at once. Why did he never tell me? I asked. Why did you let it go so long? Rose smiled faintly. Because love must be protected, even in death. He feared what knowing the truth would do to you. And now, it's time for you to choose your own path. Forgive, or be haunted forever. The chest's contents seemed to pulse with light. The letters, photographs, and documents all shimmered as if alive. And in that moment, I understood. My father's love, my mother's deceit, and Rose's haunting were not merely about betrayal or greed. They were about the survival of memory, the endurance of truth, and the choice I had to make. I picked up a photograph. Myself as a baby, cradled in Rose's arms. My mother standing just behind, smiling yet cold. The photograph told everything. The betrayal, the love, the hidden lineage. And in the corner, almost unnoticed, was a small inscription. Time reveals what hearts cannot hide. The room fell silent. The music box stopped. Rose's figure began to fade, leaving only the echo of her voice. Remember me, Margaret. Carry the truth, and you will carry me. I stood alone, clutching the photograph. The chest remained open, a reminder that the past, no matter how deeply buried, can never be fully erased. When I left the hotel that day, the sun was breaking through the fog. The world seemed brighter, yet heavier with understanding. I knew my life would never be the same. I had inherited secrets, a legacy of love and betrayal, and a connection to a mother I never truly knew, and a father I thought I understood. But one thing was clear. I was finally free. Free because I knew the truth, and free because I could choose what to do with it. My dear, if you've stayed with me this far, Thank you. Please, subscribe to hear the next chapters. The haunting isn't over. Share this story with someone who loves mysteries. And comment below where you're watching from. The world is vast, and sometimes, old stories find their way to new hearts. In the next part, I'll tell you what happened when the hotel seemed to reach out again. This time, not for me, but for my children, the next generation, who would inherit the echoes of these secrets. Years had passed since that day at the Wellington Hotel, yet the memory clung to me like a shadow I could never shake. I returned to my home in the countryside, carrying the music box, my father's letters, and the photograph of Rose holding me as a baby. Each night I would sit by the fireplace, listening to the faint echo of the lullaby, wondering if I would ever hear her voice again. I tried to live a normal life, tending my garden, writing letters, keeping the house warm and full of memory. But even as I lived, the past followed me. Every creak of a floorboard, every flicker of candlelight, every stray reflection in a mirror reminded me that the Wellington Hotel had not finished with me. And I began to notice that it wasn't just my life that bore the weight of these secrets. My children, my dear Edward and little Roseanne, were beginning to feel it too. It started one evening when I was reading to them by the fire. Edward, usually a lively boy, sat silently, staring into the shadows of the room. "Grandma," he said softly, "I think I hear someone singing." I froze, my heart pounded. "What do you hear, Edward?" "The lullaby, the one you used to play for me." My hands shook. I tried to laugh it off, but the hairs on my neck stood on end. I knew then that the music box had passed its presence on to them. The lingering love and betrayal, the echo of Rosemore and my father's hidden life, had woven itself into our family. That night, I placed the music box on the mantelpiece and watched it carefully. It remained still. I sighed, relieved. Yet, deep down, I knew it wasn't over. Days later, I received a letter. No envelope, no sender, just my name written in elegant curling script. "Margaret, the past is not done with you. What you saw at the hotel is only the beginning. You cannot protect them forever. Look to room 307. It calls again." I felt a cold wave wash over me. My children slept peacefully, unaware of the storm brewing around them. But I knew what I had to do. If the hotel still reached out, I had to confront it. Not just for myself, but for the next generation. The next morning, I packed what I could: the diary, the photograph, and the music box. Edward and Roseanne asked where I was going, and I smiled through the fear I didn't dare speak aloud. "A little trip," I said, "to remember where our story began." The journey to the Wellington Hotel was filled with the familiar fog and drizzle. The building stood silent, yet alive with memory, as if it recognized me and knew that I had brought my children unknowingly into its orbit. I parked outside and took a deep breath. Edward clutched my hand, and Roseanne stayed close by my side. The lobby smelled of dust, damp wood, and roses. The same scent that had haunted me decades ago. We climbed the grand staircase, past the portraits of strangers who once lived and died, until we reached room 307. The door was slightly ajar. The moment I stepped inside, the air shifted, cold, heavy, charged. I could feel the presence of my father, my mother, Rosemore, and the girl I had been, all pressing against me at once. I set the music box on the table. Slowly, it began to spin. The lullaby filled the room. Edward and Roseanne stood frozen, mesmerized. And then, the mirror cracked. A soft voice, familiar yet otherworldly, called my name, "Margaret." My children gasped. The shadows on the walls twisted and moved. For the first time, they saw what I had seen decades ago. The spectral figure of Rose Moore appeared, eyes filled with sorrow, her lips trembling as she whispered, "Forgive me, and know the truth." I stepped forward, clutching the photograph of us all. My father, Rose, and myself as a child. Tears streamed down my face. "I forgive you," I said. "I forgive you all. But please, leave my children out of this." The figure of Rose softened, her hands reaching toward me. "They will know only love, Margaret. You carry the strength to protect them now." And then, as suddenly as she appeared, she vanished. The room fell silent. The music box stopped. The mirror no longer moved. For the first time in decades, peace settled over room 307. I looked at Edward and Roseanne. "Do you understand now?" I asked softly. They nodded, unsure, but sensing the weight of what had passed. "Our family story is complicated," I continued, "but it is ours. We remember and we honor the past, without letting it haunt us. I turn to the camera of my memory now, my dear viewer, and I say this: sometimes the ghosts we inherit are not just shadows, but lessons. Sometimes love and betrayal are intertwined so tightly that only courage and forgiveness can untangle them. If you've stayed with me until now, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Please subscribe, like, and share this story. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The world is vast, and I want to know that my voice reaches kind souls like you, across time and space, because our stories, no matter how dark or mysterious, are meant to be remembered and passed on. The music box rests now on my mantelpiece, silent. But sometimes, in the quiet of night, I hear the faintest whisper of the past, reminding me of love, betrayal, and the courage to face what we never thought we could. And that, my dear, is the story of the luxury hotel room where I learned the truth.